Aloha, Jacob. We're having a conversation up here in my head, maybe in the astrals, or maybe in the Akashic records. Somehow we're having a conversation, and I figured I might as well videotape it and send it to you, because like one of the things I'm realizing in my therapy is that things happened when we were children, happened to us, happened around us, and we made decisions about it, and we created a story of our life. And I had a story running in my head that I deserved to be punished. My job was to suffer. I was bad. And that story replayed with different faces. And I had daddy wounds, and so I've had a pattern of being betrayed by men. And in my therapy, it's even going back to past lives. And it's, of course, the story of the feminine and the masculine for millennia, archetypically. And that story led me to having children with certain men, a certain type of man. And your dad was one of those. Had I not been so wounded at such an early age, would I have even been attracted to a man like your dad? Would I have even been working in a prison as a nurse had I, not gotten pregnant the first time, and gone on to LSU and had a college degree? So all of these things swirling around till I'm working at a prison. My husband is working offshore. I've got a young child. I have another one I don't get to see very often. I'm trying to go to college. I'm a new nurse. And I get word that my husband is taking a job, working 30 days gone, 30 days home. And at the time, tell you the truth, I couldn't decide which one I dreaded more. Because when he came home, then I had to do all the things, but he expected me to be there with him too. And when he was gone, it was just overwhelming. 2 weeks was too long. 30 days, and he didn't even ask my permission. He just told me he'd done it. And I got drunk. I decided I was going to go out. I got a babysitter, and I went out, and your dad was at the bar. And he'd been writing me all these, poems. Funny you write all those poems. But he wrote all these poems, and he would draw me little letters and flowers and stuff. And he's who named me Rose, Cajun Rose. And he was a prison guard, and I was a nurse. He never smiled, and he was proud of it. I went out and I got drunk and I danced with him, and oh my God, your dad can dance. Yep, your dad can dance. And he looked pretty good in a pair of jeans. And it was arms to hold me in the moment, and I slept with him. Jesse was coming home, and I told him. And I sent him away telling him I wanted to be with your dad. And I filed for divorce. He tried fighting it. And to be honest, about the time I was rethinking all of that, and I had actually met Jesse in a hotel room, hoping to rekindle our relationship, he told me that he was too angry with me and he would hurt me. And he married Sharon, and I got pregnant. And abortion never crossed my mind. I never had an abortion. I fought to keep Leanna. I never considered abortion with Erica. Like, whether that's because of my religious stuff, I don't know, but my dad wanted me to have an abortion when I got pregnant for Leanna. But I don't think I could have lived with myself if I had an abortion, or that's what I thought. Pretty hard living with having kids that you're not connected to, too. So, I don't know. But I can tell you, I never thought about not having you. And I really, really poured myself into trying to make my fourth marriage work. Helped your dad be able to buy a house. Began remodeling it while I was pregnant for you. Life was good there for a while. I got Leanna. Her dad called and said, she's a bitch just like her mom. Come and get her. And I was able to, and I had a house. And right at a year, there were issues with at work with the supervisor, and I had to transfer facilities, and I no longer worked at the same facility as your dad. I was out at the Eastham unit, and he was doing his thing of going to the bar and not coming home and things like that. His presence not accounted for quite often. You know your dad. And we were in Trinity, so it was real easy for him to do all that. And with me working on a different unit, sometimes he took off work. And this one day I got a phone call from somebody on his unit. I was probably about 7.5, 8 months pregnant with you. And I got a phone call saying that the house was on fire. At first I hung up on him. Bennett was known to be quite a prankster. And your dad was supposed to be at work. So I hung up on him and said, that's not funny. And then he called me back. And he said, no, really, your house is on fire. And I'm like, well, where's Gator? And he's like, oh, well, he was off. He came in and he took a day off. And so then, I tried to call your dad, can't get a hold of your dad. And I left work and I drove. And when I was driving down the street, coming into the subdivision, I passed the fire trucks. And I had gotten a tax return, and I just bought new furniture. I had like everything ready for you coming, and had the girls, and we just had a big Christmas, and I pulled up in the driveway and there was just water going down. Didn't know where the dog was. The cat. Your dad was nowhere to be found. Wasn't answering the phone. He'd been there doing yard work. There was evidence of that. I called my work and told him I wouldn't be in the next day, and she told me that I would be reported to the warden, and I just was stuck on, I don't even have underwear. I don't even have underwear. You were in my belly, and what I know now is that babies absorb the energies and you were in my belly. I was broken. But I didn't have time to grieve, really. I had to jump into action. I went into preterm labor. They gave me all kinds of medications. I had to try to rebuild a life. Fight insurance companies. I did it. I did it. Got us a trailer, got furniture. And then had you. Hospital, that was my best birthing experience. Like, you were my best birthing experience. I was in a fancy hospital. I had insurance. I was in a fancy hospital. It was wonderful. Your dad was actually sober. He was there. I thought maybe things were going to be all right after all. We had land. We were talking of building a home. It was by Mom and Pop's, and Tater was there. And I bought your dad a truck. I had a car and a truck in my name with notes to pay. Both working at the prisons. Mom and Pop kept you while I was working. The girls were there going to school. Oh, I'd gotten in a car accident. I hit a pole in the parking lot while I was pregnant with you. And had to walk a really long distance one day to get to that trailer. I had a bruise across my belly when I was pregnant with you. It was really sore. you'd had that impact right before you were born. I could have something to do with some things. Your dad was like very much about you when he was like my boy. He didn't do a lot of changing the diapers and shit like that though. Yeah. And he roughhoused with you from the very beginning. And I had a short little window there where I thought things were going to be okay. And then he won 5 numbers right on the lottery and ran off. I had those 2 vehicles. I had to trade them in on another one that I was way upside down on and screwed around on. I took him back. He decided he didn't want to live over there with Pops and them for whatever reason. And I bought a house in Riverside, my name. And he ran off again. He was staying gone and everything. And I finally decided I was going to leave him. Georgia had come in Riverside, and I was having to just dump that mortgage. It was a beautiful home. That would have been a beautiful place to grow all of y'all up. It was so gorgeous. We had the big dog, Wharf. There were these big giant worms, 18-inch worms. Woodpecker. I needed support and help with y'all, and so I moved out to Burkeville. And you were with me. That was probably like the best time. Is I'd go down and work, but either the boys, Georgia's boys, or would keep you, or Georgia would keep you. We'd go down there and work for like 5 days every other week, or once a month, and it was paying me so freaking good. I was making so much money then, and I was able to. I bought a trailer. I was putting in septic. One day, my grandmother was dying. I was talking to her regular. She was at the end of her life, and we were talking regular, and she finally called and said I could come. And I was in the middle of putting in septic, getting set up in Burkeville. And gathered everybody up and went to Louisiana for that. My grandma died day after Valentine's Day. Day before Valentine's Day. And I called your dad. I was so lonely. And he was, of course, sending his messages. Everything was going to be different this time. All of this. And I let him come over, and I got pregnant for Amy. You and Morph were so cute together. I got pregnant for Amy. Thought maybe the problem is Trinity, him being in the prison, him not having something of himself, feeling good about himself. And so I borrowed some money from Mom and Dad, and I paid for his college, and he quit, and I had to work even more. So During the time he was in nursing school, I was going away, sleeping in hospitals and working back-to-back 16, 12-hour shifts. I was gone. I was working 70 hours a week, most weeks, while he went to nursing school and took care of you and the girls. And I went into preterm labor with Amy, and I couldn't work, and I couldn't pay the bills, and your dad wouldn't go to work unless it was when he graduated, and in Trinity I borrowed a lot of money from my parents during that time that's held against me as things they've done for me. And then when he graduated, he decided I was able to get him on at Crockett Hospital, and he made more than me. Like, he started at what I was at after 5 years of fucking working there. And he decided he wasn't going to pay for the trailer. It was in my name. And so that led to me going into bankruptcy. And I just had to go along. I couldn't work. I was on preterm labor. And we moved back to Trinity. And we were both working at Crockett Hospital. And I gave birth to Amy, and 3 months later, I was running 105 fever. It was 2 days before Christmas. And I'd gone back to work, like, after a week after I'd had Amy. 2 weeks, like, I had to have my money to pay for what the place that he got and all of this. So, like, went right back to work immediately. And like I said, 2 days before Christmas, I was running 105-degree fever. And I finally got him to take me to he took me to the doctor's office, not the ER. Took me to the doctor's office because I threatened to call an ambulance. My white count was super, super high. I was septic. And they took me over to the hospital I'm working at. And I remember the doctor telling Charlie he better not leave because and I went into surgery thinking it was my appendix. And your dad wasn't there when I woke up the first time. The next time he was there, but he smelled horribly of alcohol. And he wanted me to leave the hospital. He pushed me to tell him I was okay and just let him treat me at home and this, that, and another, to hurry up and get out. And Dr. Patrick came in and he told me to come and see him on January 2nd. He had your back to your dad, and he told me to come alone. And on January 2nd, in between that time, he slept with me again. So I didn't get the IV antibiotics I really needed. And he had reinfected me. And on January 2nd, I found out he'd given me a sexually transmitted disease, chlamydia, that had, because I had just had the tubal, gone out the ends of the tubes and caused peritonitis and nearly killed me. Nearly killed me. I called the hospital and I told him he wouldn't be coming in that night, that day, that night, whatever shift it was. And I got somebody to watch you kids. And I went and picked him up and we went for a drive. And I told him I wanted a divorce. And he kept telling me, oh, he didn't do that. He tried to claim that the surgical instruments must have been contaminated and all of this stuff. And Dr. Patrick had told me, there's no other way you got this. And he had this notebook with him. We drove out towards Alaska and finally just I'm like, I want a divorce. I'm getting a divorce. Like, I don't believe you. I know what I know. Like, there's no way you can deny this now. And when I got back to the house and I'd let the babysitters go and he'd gone out for beer, and I picked up that notebook and there were poems and love letters to Kim, this skinny old hag looking bar fly nurse that we both worked with. She was supposed to have been my friend. I went and played pool with her. I pitched about your dad to her. I'd given her rides to work and bought milk for our kids. And there were these love letters and love poems to her in that notebook. Same thing he had done with me, right? At the prison. And I lost my shit and I went looking for my gun. And you kids were in the house and I went looking for my gun and I grabbed my buckshot, but the gun was in the truck. And so when he pulled up and he got near the door, I went running out to the car and I grabbed the gun and I was loading it when he threw it across the yard. And we went at it and he wanted to take you and Amy. And I fought him with everything I had in me, and the thing that stopped him was Worf started running at the door to bust it down. And he stopped and he left and took off in his truck. And I tried to go to the police department, but they actually called him and told him I was there, and he went and emptied his stuff from the house and took what he wanted, emptied accounts, all kinds of things like that. And I had to move. I moved away. I lost my job at the hospital because I beat up Kim. And I quit without notice and got banned from East Texas medical facilities for 10 years. And Leanna was really starting to she'd run up the phone bill talking to some boy, and that's what my brother and his wife used as their first excuse for cutting me off completely, was that messed up their credit and caused them issues when they were going to buy a house. During that time, I went back to work for the prison, but going to work for the prison gave me no choice but to have your dad as my beneficiary of my life insurance with the state. And he was cutting brake lines and following me and running me off roads and stalking me. I was living in terror. I met Bobby online, Indian guy that made like $250,000 a year. And he helped me, and I moved to Bryan College Station to be far enough away from your dad that when he got drunk, he didn't come harass me. And you were telling me things like, I don't have to listen to you, you bitch. And you wanted to be with your dad, and of course it was my boy, my boy, my boy, you're not taking my boy. So I left you with him. Jesse had an accident and wasn't able to work anymore and pay child support, which that was like $700 a month that I wasn't going to have anymore. And I let her go live with Jesse and me and Leanna and Amy, who was just a little bitty baby, moved to College Station. While in College Station, Leanna shoplifted and was getting in such trouble. And Georgia stepped up, and I let her go live with Georgia. And it was just me and Amy. Until 2004. I was 19. Amy was born in 96. 98, I moved back to Houston, me and Amy. Leanna came back to live with me in Houston. You came back a few times when I was sober. I'd gotten sober in 2000 and I was in AA, and Brandy was living with me. You came to live with me for a while until your dad showed up at school one day, claimed I had abducted you, and took you again. I even one time got an apartment with your dad to be able to have you have a stable place, but he was masturbating and watching porn and leaving his cum-filled underwear in my bed. And he wasn't cleaning up, and he wasn't paying the bills like he had agreed. And then I guess when you were like 14, you told me that, and I had married Dave to be able to have a house and a place for Amy's stability. That's what I wanted. I wanted for her to be able to go to a school and graduate, have stability. Something I hadn't had. Moved at least once a year, every year since I was 15 years old. We got 4 years in that house and had enough financial stability to when you said you were being abused, I stepped into the courts and I got you with me. You were such a mess, and I tried everything I knew to try. Psychiatrist, psychologist, even mental institution, right? That was so horrid to leave you there. I didn't know what to do. And when you raised your fist at me and left the house saying you were running away, and I reported you as a runaway, I had to legally to stay out of fucking trouble myself. I caught up in a system, and you didn't, barely holding on to Amy after some of the stuff. Barely. I fought to keep y'all so hard. And then I had to say, no, you can't come back here. And gosh, that must have hurt you. You were hurting me so hard. And Amy said you were molesting her and that she was afraid of you. And I had to say no. For her and for me, and because Dave was saying he was going to divorce me if I let you come back. I felt so guilty for making that choice. I've allowed you as a grown man. Yes, you're my child, but you are also a grown man. And I would not let anybody else treat me the way that you've treated me. And somehow, me trying to take you on a vacation as a grown man, money came up missing. You were pounding on my windshield when I drove away terrified. Terrified. I came back around to get you. But somehow the story becomes that I was running away to Roswell to be with the aliens, and all of a sudden Leanna's acting like I'm dangerous, and Dave has filed for divorce and canceled the credit cards and locked me out of the house, and I become homeless. Which I've embraced it. And we reconnected, and I saw your baby, and you took $500 of my donations. And then you've cut me off over $20 before that I couldn't get you $20 one time when you were showing nugs of weed on Facebook. And I buy your book, but I'm berated because I write books, you say. I just wanted you to know your story from or some of it, I guess. How I would host you here today if you said you were landing in Kona. I would. I'd give you a big hug, and I'd see where we are today as the man you may have become. But if you were becoming a man that I wouldn't have to recover from, and other women weren't having to recover from, and your daughters won't have to recover from, then you'd be interacting with me differently. And you'd be coming to honor me. And you're becoming curious about me. You look the most like me. You're a handsome man. Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. I choose to see some of your creativity. You're pushing past barriers and boundaries. Me. That part of you. And you've had a wicked ass road to hoe to. And I'm proud of you for still being here. And it's like I always thought when you were little, like it was this thing, you were so freaking sensitive, but pissed off and angry at the same time, and challenging to reach. And I can't do the whole like chasing and suffering and all that stuff, or feeling like it's got anything to do with me, really. Like carrying the guilt of why we don't have a connection initially. Like where that got broken and who's actually responsible for that. And you're still bonded and close to this man that abused you horribly, abused me. So, and there is something too that the friend of your enemy is an enemy too. And the last straw with your dad was, like I, despite everything that he has done, I have not sought vengeance. I have prayed and wished for him to become a good grandfather. And when Amy died, was attempting to work with him. When all that was done, and I don't know why you sliced and diced me that particular time at one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. Don't understand why he felt the need to, or Leanna felt the need to, or how my dad could pay for the betrayal of me. And all that was done around that. I still don't need vengeance. Y'all will have your own, everyone will have their own just rewards. Y'all took away my family. You take away my connection to the fruits of my womb. Scapegoat and berate, demonize, belittle, ignore, reject, abandon, erase. My sister burned my baby books, for Christ's sake. I think I need to develop like a comedy routine around religion. Yeah, you and I had some fun once when we teamed up. somebody else came in the middle of that. You haven't had much interaction with me on your own when you're single. I'm quite cool. A lot of your peers think I'm fabulous. And I've got some spirit sons that have hugged me in place of you. We've interacted. They know they call me Mama Rose. So I know this ain't all me. And I do find places for my love to go. There's been a hole and a sore spot where you could have been. Cells of your body still are in mine. It ends there. Your children, not so. Some of my DNA, but not cells of my body. But there are still cells of my body in you, and your body in me. We're connected, whether we like it or not. And I send love through those connections. But I'm going to cease reaching out. And I'm going to cease suffering. Because you've made choices to keep a story that keeps us apart. I'm going to continue to make it a work of art. Well, that's today's story time, I suppose. I never know where these are going to go. You don't know where they're going to go. If you'll listen to it now, totally ignore it get found after I'm dead and gone somehow. I release the outcome into the hands of Great Spirit, Odin, all those who would work for the best of all concerned, to engineer an outcome that serves our lineage, for love to be resourced as the source of our connections and our purpose in this world. A rededication, a familial creation, a reconnecting of mycelial bonds, a sitting by a pond for a day of fishing, wishing you delight in being my son. And me and having birthed you. A part much of while you grew, even less of a real influence. Very few chances given. Cast off as a sinner. Mostly absent. A character in a fairy tale. Fractured. Fractaled. Is it time to flip the script? Restoring a glorious next chapter. Perhaps. I wonder. While I wander along the beach, wishing you were perfect. Aloha, Mom.